Okay, so we in this class we're going to do kind of an extension of what we did in Ceramics 1. That's kind of how I like to roll with it. We're going to use pinch pot construction for this first assignment, and we're going to make oil lamps. These are some examples of some oil lamps. This is the top view, and so that's kind of a good thing. There's a little lid on it. Let's work with this one. These come off. That's kind of fun. There's a hole in the inside. That's where the wick goes through. I don't have wicks in all of them. Some of them have a wick in them already, but that's where the wick goes. And so you fill the oil in here. So this is, I don't know, a sphere that can hold some liquid, kind of a bottle sort of a form. You put the oil inside there, you put the wick in there, you put them together, and then the wick will suck up the oil. You can use it as an oil lamp. They have in like craft stores and that sort of thing, there's the candle oil is what you would use, and then they also have wicks and a variety of different things like that. I'll see if we can supply at least some stuff there, probably not the oil, but maybe some wicks so we can get those going. This one was done by Mr. Moffat. Has kind of a cool sort of a look around it on top, and has some textural design things on it with those. That was one cool one. This one is another one of Mr. Moffat's. He wanted to make them kind of look like stones or something that you might find in a river, and so he's created this design and this sort of a look to it, so it looks like a rock, which is a good deal. Here's another example. This one is almost completely more spherical in its nature, which is kind of a cool deal. This one, these other two, this one has a real broken up surface, textured surface on the outside, and then actually has some added on feet where those first three did not, and to try and enhance the look of those. And once again, the top is going to come off and create an oil lamp. Another one with a different sort of a foot, a different sort of a look, kind of like a, I don't know, upside down teardrop, maybe an acorn or something. In the construction with this one. This one actually has the wick in it, and so you can see that you put the wick through the hole, and then the wick just kind of goes down inside, and you're ready to rock and roll with that. Here's another one, more spherical in nature, no foot. When you make yours, you can do either. You can either have it without a foot or with a foot. It depends on what you want to do with those. And once again, the removable lid to make sure that would come up for you. So those are some examples of some pinch pot things that we're going to make using the pinch technique. What we're going to need is we need a pinch pot. Now let's review that technique. Some of you may or may not have had the Ceramics 1 class, and so maybe lacking a little bit of knowledge on pinch pots. I'll make one quickly, and then we'll get on to what we're doing. You just need a little bit of clay, and somewhere between maybe a racquetball sized piece of clay and a tennis ball, a lacrosse ball. I'm trying to think what other ones we might have there. And you're just going to make it into a circular shape. This one is real small. This is like a mini tangerine size piece on that. But for the sake of this demo, we'll use that. So put a hole in the middle. Bing, ready to go. Start pinching it out, gradually pinching the sides so they go thinner. And we're going to do a double hand it here. You want to make sure you do pinch them out rather slow. What I'm actually doing it quickly, is I'm feeling for where it's high, and as I feel it, I just squeeze that part down so it's a little bit lower. If you squeeze them gradually, it'll make them consistent on the thickness of the walls. That's a desired thing. Now, if you want to make it taller, also, if you take and you pull up like this when you pinch, you'll find that it will go taller for you. Some people, when they hold like this, they start pinching and they start rotating out, and they get this flat dish piece, and so it doesn't really work very well for creating this design where we have it's more of a taller piece. So if you just take it and pull it as you rotate around, that will make your piece taller and make it more like a hemisphere, half of a sphere for the bottom. And so that's where we're getting that look for it. The idea is we want to pinch it till it's 1/4 of an inch thick or thinner than that. I prefer just a little bit thinner. The 1/4 of an inch rule we have is true for all ceramic pieces. Just as a reminder, since this is kind of the beginning of the classes, that you need to follow that rule. If you make something that's thicker than 1/4 of an inch, there's a chance that it could explode. I happened to find this when I was cleaning out a little bit today. This one's pretty thick. You look at it and it's a pretty thick wall on that one, but I found it, and this is the deal right here. I don't know if you guys see very well, but right here you notice there's a little bit of an air bubble right here. There's a little bit of an air bubble right here. That's what caused this thing. Here's another one that was over here, and then another one just here. Not very much of a bubble either. And so when we heated that up, the air started to expand and blew the side right off the pot. And so we want to make sure that it's 1/4 of an inch or thinner when we make our projects. Okay, back to the pinch pot. So I'm pinching this out, making it 1/4 inch or thinner, and you need to make 2 of these as you make that. And so that's enough so you can kind of see where we're going with this on trying to make ourselves a pinch pot. So you want to make 2. Now I suggest that you want to have these a little bit stiffer rather than the way they are right now. This is the moist clay, and it's a little bit flexible and flimsy, and that so it makes it kind of hard to join things together, because we are going to join them together. So last class period, I made two pinch pots. Okay, I had pinch pot 1 and I got pinch pot 2. And with that, now the side is a little bit more stiff. And so when I take and I join them together, it will stay a little bit easier. That's always the hard part in joining these together. Now, it doesn't fit together exactly perfectly, but I did try to make it so that the rims are about the same size. So when we put them together here, they'll fit. Now, as you make your pinch pots, you may find that you need to adjust one in a little bit or widen it out a little bit so that they do match up when you want to join them together. And so that's what the next step is going to be. We need to join those together. Let's get some slip. If you wanted to get your own slip container, that is an okay sort of a thing to do. If not, that's also okay. There's usually slip containers at the tables. It's just a clay water mixture is what we're looking for in that. All right. And we need a needle tool. As a reminder, anytime you're joining clay together, you need 3 things. The first one is you need to have the surfaces kind of rough, and so you can scratch the surface with a needle tool. For those of you who made scoring tools last time, that'd probably make things go quicker. I think I have one up here. Let's go check. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So this was the scoring tool that we made by putting pins on a piece of tape. Pretend this is tape here. And so we taped them down so they'd stay still like that. And then we just used a hot glue gun and blobbed some on there. Then when that was dry, I guess, for lack of a cool, we flipped it over and we put glue on the other side. And so that creates a nice little scratching tool for taking care of the surface. So if I'm doing that, I can move along a little bit quicker on making sure these surfaces are roughened up, scored to join them together. And so that's thing number 1. We need to have the surfaces, both of the surfaces, rough. Now I usually try to leave a lot of times the rim a little bit thicker when I'm making my projects. That kind of helps also in joining these pieces together if there's a little bit of slightly thicker, not a ton thicker, but just a little bit. Also, if you need to trim, you can come with an X-Acto knife or something like that. If you notice there's some pieces, you can trim it off so it's a little bit more level. Mine's kind of moving up and down. I'm going to see if I can make that work for me. That one's scratched and ready to go. And then this one. Make sure you're scratching in the same direction. And so if I'm making this one scratched this way, I got to make this one go the same way so that those scratch marks match up with each other. The other option is I could have tried to go around in this sort of a fashion. If that was the case, then I got to do the same thing over here. Okay, scoring tools can kind of be good. Also, another thing you can use for a scoring tool if you don't want to make one of these, if you go to like the dollar store or an inexpensive place, a lot of times they'll have combs, and if you can get like a fine tip comb, just a regular type ones there that you can purchase, a lot of times the ones that hurt your head, like that you go and you use them, you comb them with your head and they stab you in the scalp and it hurts. Those are great for scoring tools. Just take clip off some of the ends and then you got a magic scoring tool with the various prongs on it. Okay, so here we got scored, step number 1. Next is I want to put some slip on. Now you can use just water as an agent for the slip as well, but a clay water mixture of slip is probably preferred. And it can be thicker. This is a pretty thick, goopy sort of a thing, but it can also be thinner and still work very, very well. I'm trying to get the slip into the grooves so that it will help join it together. Now the slip is starting to dissolve some of the clay, not like some glues that like starts to dissolve immediately, right? And that's kind of a deal of why we use them. But this is just barely starting to dissolve. It's not going to break it down really quick and fall apart in your hands, but it does start to dissolve the clay and create kind of an adhesion area, a place where when you put them together, it should stick. But you want to put slip on both sides. I'm starting to fall out of my view area here. Hold on. Okay, now we got slip on both sides. Then, so that was step number 2. Score it. Step number 1, put slip on it. Step number 2. Then I need to kind of figure out a way to put it together. Hopefully these match up. And I'm just going to, oops, I put it too far that way. There we go. And the next part is pressure. I need to take and I need to push the sides together a little bit. And so I'm taking and just pushing those edges. Now for this particular assignment, to help facilitate that pressure, I'm going to take and I'm using a fettling knife. And so I have that kind of together here. And I can just take and I can push this clay down. See if we can get it so we can see what's going on here. Just push the clay down onto the other side. It creates kind of like a seam, an effect like almost has stitches on it, joining it together. So as such, I mean, you could leave that as a design if you wanted onto your thing, or you can smooth it out later. But this adds the pressure so the pieces can be joined together. And so that's what I'm doing with this. Just the tip of the fettling knife, pulling it across so that it'll attach. Like I said, it does kind of mar the edge a little bit. If I've made the edge a little bit thicker, it'll work out pretty good. And you can do this on both sides to make sure that you have a good solid seam. So I'm not going to do it on the other side, but I could on those. Let's utilize some other tools we have here. You could use something like this eventually for smoothing that out. Once you have the seams put together, we want to make it so we can't see the seam. So this is the wooden knife tool. When you pull it across, that usually fills those holes. So that's a tool. That's a useful one that we could use. And I'm kind of smushing that into those holes. So it's more blended. Also, rib tools. Rib tools are good tools. They're very nice for making edges. I'm going to rest that on the table a little bit so I can get a little bit of pressure there. Rib tools are really good for pulling clay across the surface. And so as I'm making this, I want it to be somewhat rounded, and so that I don't see the seam, you'll notice that the rib tool works really well. It has a flat surface on it, and it makes so that seam is not as visible. Get that just a little bit more cleaned up. Now you saw that the surface was a little bit, the rim on both those bowls that I had, it was not completely smooth, so you can make adjustments on trying to get it so it's a little bit more smooth. And so that's kind of a deal. And I made kind of a big balloon ball. Here's another tool that's helpful for these. If you want it really smooth, you can come and also use the metal scraping tool. That'll just take and drag it across the surface. What it's doing is it's peeling off little bits of clay and making it very smooth. You can take it so it's a little bit rounded. Try not to bend it like in half so that there's a crease or a kink in it. But I can take this and create a very smooth surface by blending that together. Now, since the clay is a little bit harder, I can hold it well. If it was a little bit more flimsy, it might be a little bit more difficult. So you might want to have the clay, after you work with it, sit out for a little while. Now from here, I can go and start to also clean up some of this area up here if I want to make it smoother. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I just wanted you guys to get the idea of what it is we're trying to do. And so for right here, now it's time to make sure I get the surface looking like what I want it to. You know, we had Mr. Moff's example where there might be some lines coming across. I'm not worried about the lid yet. Something that's completely smooth. This one, I didn't put in the cracks afterwards. When I pinched out the clay, it was a little bit more dry. And so since it was a little bit more dry, it developed these cracks naturally and gave this rough sort of a surface. If I wanted to do some sort of addition, some sort of treatment on the surface, this would be the appropriate time to do it as well. And so while it's just still as kind of a big clay balloon. Once we are done with that, you can put a foot on if you want, and we're gonna cut out the tip. Or not the tip, the lid, that's what it's called. We'll cut out the lid a little bit later on that. But for this part, for right now, that's what we're going to do. That gets your initial shape, and you're probably going to take some time cleaning up the surface and making it work for you. That's the beginning stages of the oil lamp. And I'll show you cutting out the lid and maybe putting on a foot or something like that at a later time. That's the deal. That's what you guys are doing.